Today we will be learning about quadrilateral shapes and the qualities and characteristics that make them up. For today's lesson, we will have a number of objectives that we hope to achieve by the end of this video. Objective A. After this video, the students will be able to clearly identify shapes and their attributes by putting them in categories using a T-chart. Objective B. After the video, the students will be able to find the connections of different shapes' attributes to another shape using a Venn diagram. And our last objective, Objective C. After the video, the students will be able to not only connect shapes, but will be able to draw them and give examples and non-examples of quadrilaterals. So, what is a quadrilateral, you might ask? Well, let's meet a few shapes and find out. So when we are looking at these shapes, I ask that you guys take a closer look at what they might have in common. What similarities can we notice? And what stands out when you look at these shapes?
Hi everybody, I am Mr. Trapezoid. I have 4 sides and angles. All my sides and angles are not necessarily the same length.
Hello everyone. It is nice to meet you. I am Miss Kite, and I have 2 sets of equal sides, but only 1 pair of opposite angles.
Howdy y'all, I am Mr. Square, and it is a pleasure to meet you. I have 4 equal sides and angles. Can y'all imagine that?
Hey everybody, I am Mrs. Rectangle. Unlike Square, I do not have 4 equal sides, but I do have all equal angles.
Hi everyone, I am Mr. Rhombus. Like a square, I have all equal sides, but my angles are not always right angles.
Hey everyone, I am Miss Parallelogram. I might look like Mr. Rhombus, but unlike him, I have 2 sets of opposite sides that are equal. But remember, my opposite sides must always be parallel. Well, that's all the shapes that we're going to meet today. So now that we've explored a few shapes, can you guess what all of these quadrilaterals have in common? Take a closer look at the angles, the sides, and the length of those sides. Maybe they'll stand out. Now that you've looked at these shapes, can you guess what they all have in common? That's right. A quadrilateral is any flat, 4-sided shape having all straight sides that are connected together. Of course, there are more shapes, but those are just a few examples. So the question is, how do we categorize quadrilaterals? Is it shapes, sides, angles? Remember what quadrilaterals have in common, and that's how we can begin to categorize shapes. What do we notice? Is it sides, angles? What are the differences between a rhombus and a square, a trapezoid and a kite, a parallelogram and a rectangle? While these shapes are all very similar, they have distinct differences that we can begin to categorize them with. So remember in this task, we said that we were going to use a Venn diagram to be able to categorize shapes. In this Venn diagram, I have already set it up. We are going to classify shapes by equal sides and unequal sides. We have already learned that we can categorize shapes by their characteristics, such as angles or sides. So we're going to go ahead and do sides. So if we look at shapes like this kite, we can already notice that the sides are not the same. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that in the unequal. If we go ahead and we use this trapezoid, we can also notice that it's not equal sides. So we can go ahead and put that there. If we go ahead and move to the square, we can notice that they have all equal sides. So we're going to move that to the equal sides. If we use this rectangle, we notice that the sides are not all the same. If it were, it would be a square. If we move ahead to this rhombus, remember that we learned earlier that it's very similar to a square. The only difference is that the angles do not have to be right angles. So we can go ahead and put this in the equal sides column. Lastly, we have this parallelogram. We can already notice that the sides are not equal, so we can go ahead and put that on the unequal sides. As you can see, the sides are very different in all of these shapes. While they are all classified as quadrilaterals, they can be categorized differently based on different characters. So earlier we used a Venn diagram to classify these shapes. We used it and we were doing equal sides versus unequal sides. Now we're going to be focusing on equal angles and unequal angles. So if we look at the rectangle on the left side, we can notice that it's in the equal angles column. And we know that a rectangle has all equal angles because they are all the same. And we can also look at the square and we can also see that they are all equal angles. And we can also further identify this because it has all equal sides. Now, if we move to the right and we look at the unequal angles column, we can notice that we have a lot more in this column than we have in the equal angles column. Now, if we look at the kite, the trapezoid, the rhombus, and the parallelogram, we can all begin to notice that while we think that they're very dissimilar, we can notice that they begin to have a lot more similarities when we classify them by unequal angles and equal angles and by sides. Now, we can notice that this kite has unequal angles. We can notice that this is an acute angle and these are two very obtuse angles. Likewise, if we look at this trapezoid, we can begin to notice that this is a very large and obtuse angle and that this is a very acute angle. If we look at this rhombus, we can also begin to notice that this is also a very obtuse angle and this is a very acute angle. Similar, we can move on to this parallelogram and notice that this is a very obtuse angle and that this is a very acute angle. Now remember, in this lesson, our goal is to find different categories for categorizing shapes. Now, we have our category of quadrilaterals, but looking further past this T-chart and the Venn diagram, we can begin to notice that these shapes can qualify into more than one category. Looking into the shapes, we can notice that they have similarities to each other and dissimilarities. Using these similarities, we can begin to group them using our T-charts and our Venn diagram. So we can also use these skills that we've learned using the Venn diagram and the T-chart to actually draw these shapes. So if we decide that we're going to use the key definitions of a quadrilateral, we know that it has to have four sides, it has to be closed, and it has to be a flat shape. So we can't draw a 3D shape. So let's draw a non-example. If we do a triangle, we would have a non-example because it's not four sides. So that doesn't work. Another non-example would be a shape that is open and it's not actually closed. So let's say we drew just some random open shape. It doesn't work because it's not completely closed. It could work if we decided that we wanted to close this line. Then it would work. An example of a quadrilateral that we could draw is also a square. We know this works because it is a four-sided enclosed shape and it's not 3D. Another shape that we could draw is that we could draw a rectangle. And again, we know that these work because they're at least four sides, they are enclosed, and they're not a 3D shape. If we decided that we were going to draw a 3D shape, it would be kind of difficult because it would not be a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral has to be a flat shape. We can also decide to draw a rhombus, or we could draw a parallelogram. And we know that these work because they have four sides and they are flat and they are completely enclosed. So remember, when we are drawing our quadrilaterals, it has to be a closed four-sided shape. It cannot be any open shape. It has to be closed. This doesn't work, and these work. So let's review some key points. If we look at this square, we know that a square has 4 equal sides and angles. If we look at this rectangle, we know that there are 2 sets of equal sides and 4 equal angles. If we look at this rhombus, we know that there are 4 equal sides, but the angles are not always right angles. If we look at this parallelogram, we know that there are 2 sets of opposite sides, and opposites are always parallel. If we look at this kite, we know that 2 sets of equal sides, but only 1 pair of opposite angles. And last but not least, if we look at this trapezoid, we know that there are 4 angles and 4 different length sides. So by now, we have had a lot of practice categorizing shapes by their qualities and characteristics. If you feel you need more practice, make sure you check out the links I have included at the end of this video. Thanks for watching!